Hi, and welcome back to Mingus on Tech. I'm Ken Mingus, Executive Editor at Computer World. I'm here with Dan Rosenbaum, Mr. Mobile. We're going to be talking about Mobile World Congress this year and what to look out for. Stick around. Okay, and we're back. So, Dan, hey, thanks for stopping by and talking to me for a few minutes about Mobile World Congress. I wanted to pick your brain before you head to Barcelona and see if you have any ideas for what's going to be the big story coming out of the show this year.
I think the big story is going to be 5G this year. I mean, 5G has been one of those things that's been building for about the last 5 years, maybe 6 years. But this year is really going to be the one where it's not all they're going to be talking about.
Of course.
But there's going to be a lot of bandwidth, so to speak.
I was going to say pun not intended, right? Well, okay, what the hell? A little networking joke there.
But I mean, 5G is really going to be the story of this show.
Okay, and what is it? I mean, obviously there have been a lot of trials, pilot programs around 5G that have been in the works for a while. And is it just that basically the technology is now in place and the carriers are ready to start rolling it out? Or what is it about this year that sort of brings everything together?
I don't know that I'd say the technology is in place, but the carriers are getting ready to roll it out.
Okay.
This year, I think the first trial networks are being set up. Verizon is going to have a trial in the United States, and I think they've already actually put some bits across a test network. But a lot of big players are going to be putting out test networks this year. With any luck, the 3GPP, which is the Technical Standards Organization, is going to be finally setting or finishing the technical standards for it. And the plan is for the first commercial deployments next year and in 2020. Which is right on schedule. They've been talking about 2020 for many years now, but that's not so far away anymore.
No, it's not. Dumb question, but my knowledge of networking is somewhat limited. Is 5G around the world? There's no difference in like 5G in Europe or 5G in Asia or 5G in the US. It's just 5G, right?
I think it's just 5G. I mean, like 4G, it'll probably work on different bands in different countries and different continents, but that's just the way network working works. There are technical reasons that they have to be in different bands. There are commercial reasons. If someone has a television broadcasting on a band that's used in Europe for mobile communications, obviously it can't be used in that continent or anywhere near that. But basically, it's going to be 5G is going to be 5G.
Okay. And then in terms of 5G, when I think about it, I've always thought of it as being able to deliver more and I guess broader bandwidth. Is 5G, is it all about bandwidth, or is there more that 5G does that we should be aware of?
It's not just about bandwidth. I mean, bandwidth is certainly the big headline.
Yeah.
Although no one knows exactly what that bandwidth is going to be because the technical standards aren't set and they haven't run the test networks yet. But all the promises are that you'll be having gigabit speed to mobile devices over a 5G network. But what's really sort of interesting about 5G is the ability to tune the bandwidth to particular devices. So rather than 4G or LTEs having very rigid band size and circuit sizes, 5G is going to be much more flexible. So, for instance, here in New York City, people ride the subway, they have their phones, they come out of a subway tunnel over a bridge or into the atmosphere, and you have 500 people or 1,000 people all with their smartphones all trying to get a signal at the same time.
Right.
It doesn't usually end well. I mean, some people get signals, some people don't, sometimes no one does. What 5G promises is that network operators will be able to tune the network so that they know when they have 500 people suddenly coming on the network in one place at one time, that they can constrict some channels so that not everyone is going to get everything, but everyone's going to get something.
Okay, so it's a way it almost sounds like a smart network or the ability to kind of, as you say, fine tune the network for needs. Is this the sort of thing that, and I realize we're talking years before this is really in place, across the US and in different parts of the world. But once it's in place, is it the sort of technology that will allow people to finally have access in these congested areas, like you say, like in New York City, where you can't, sometimes you can get a signal, sometimes you can't. And also, in broader spaces like, Midwest or out West where it's difficult sometimes to get a signal. Does 5G play a role out there too? Is it?
Well, that's another interesting thing about 5G is that it's going to work on a broader range of frequencies. And what that means, I mean, there's some frequencies that can carry a lot of bandwidth and not penetrate very far. They can't get into buildings, or they can't distribute particularly far. And that's just physics. That's the way frequencies and penetration work, and you can't fix that.
Right.
But what 5G will let you do is set up a network that can maybe carry further with less bandwidth. Or in the case of an industrial application, talk to devices that were previously really sort of obscure and off in a corner, in the corner of a manufacturing plant that's very dense and you can't get a lot of signal in there usually.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll be able to get enough signal in there so you can talk to a sensor that runs a factory, a conveyor belt, for instance.
Yeah.
Now you don't need a lot of bandwidth to talk to that device hanging out there.
Mm-hmm.
So what 5G will let you do, or 5G network will let you do, is decide that, well, we don't need a lot of bandwidth over there, but we don't need a lot of bandwidth, so we'll just put that thing out there and it'll be fine. Where in a 4G LTE network, that becomes very complicated. You need to be, running Wi-Fi out into the hinterlands, and then you have backhaul problems. 5G promises to be a really good solution for things like that.
It's interesting because, and we've talked about this before, with so much going on around the Internet of Things now, and so many sensors, devices, and as you say, they don't need a lot of bandwidth or a lot of strength, but they have to have something to stay, connected. It sounds like that as 5G begins to get built out, it's going to be a real boon for IoT. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, it's going to be a real boon for IoT. It's going to be a real boon for smart cities, for autonomous driving too. And it's going to, and let me get back to that. Mm-hmm. But it's going to change the nature a lot of edge computing and the way edge computing works, because you'll be able to communicate much faster with the edge devices than you can now. Faster bandwidth, less latency. So maybe you'll need even less power at the edge than you do now, or we'll see how that shakes out. Where that's important for an autonomous car or a semi-autonomous car, mm-hmm. is cars are a weird application of networking, right? You need a lot of processing on site because. Yep. There's a lot of processing that has to happen instantly, and if you have a half-second delay because you're talking to the network and the network's talking back to you, you've wrapped your car around a tree somewhere.
Right.
With more bandwidth that's faster and lower latency, maybe the car doesn't need quite so much processing on board. Maybe the information that is swapping with the network can be different somehow. You have a greater chance for vehicle-to-vehicle communication, or V2X, what they're calling, which is a vehicle to everything else, to infrastructure for traffic lights or whatever.
It's interesting because, there are so many parts of this sort of networking ecosystem that seem to be coming along even as the standards are still being defined. You've got the network itself, you've got the technology, you've got vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to infrastructure, IoT. So I can understand. This sounds to me like 5G has the potential to be a bigger leap in terms of mobile and networking than, say, maybe the leap from 3G to 4G or earlier generations. Is that fair, or am I over expecting what 5G is going to deliver?
No, I think it's fair. The main thing that 5G provides is more and faster bandwidth, but at some point the the quantitative difference becomes a qualitative difference.
Okay.
And at some point, there's going to be so much networking floating around in the air that it's just going to allow more and different things than better phone calls or being able to watch the Olympics on your phone while you're standing in the middle of a field.
Yeah.
I think you might be forgetting a little bit what a big jump it was from 3G to 4G.
Okay. Remind me, because I probably am. Yeah.
It really changed the way certainly we use smartphones.
Mm-hmm.
That it enabled streaming media to an extent that 3G really didn't. I mean, if you want to remember, go out in the street and I think there's a setting on your iPhone or your Android phone that you can step back to 3G.
Okay.
And you can experience life in the 20-aughts.
In the when dinosaurs ruled the earth.
When dinosaurs roamed the world, and when Intel was an important player in mobile communications. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
All right. So
long time ago.
Clearly, 5G is going to be the big deal. Obviously, with Mobile World Congress, I always think about hardware devices, handsets, things like that. There's a lot of talk that I guess Samsung is looking at the Galaxy S9 may be revealed then. And any hardware announcements on the horizon from the show that you can think of that we should be watching for?
Well, there's probably going to be infrastructure announcements that will just make your eyes water out of boredom, but are probably going to be important. I'm not tracking too many of those. Yeah. Samsung, of course, is going to have the S9, although they're not saying so in so many words.
Right, rumored, quote unquote. Yeah.
Yeah, there've been rumors and photographs, and it's as close to being a sure thing as any rumor is. So I think you could reasonably bet on the S9 coming out. Yeah. But you can also, if you believe the rumors and the leaks, it's not going to be a particularly exciting phone. It's not going to be a big step from the S8. It's not going to be as big a jump from the 6 to the 7 was, for instance. It's the annual Samsung release. Right. I think Alcatel is going to have something. I mean, one of the things about Mobile World is that it's a global show. Mm-hmm. And I like going to Mobile World because it reminds me every year of just how big the world really is. There are manufacturers there who I've never heard of, making phones for not much money for tiny markets. Mm-hmm. and that's a real business. That's an important part of the business, and they're introducing new stuff, and it may be a generation or two behind, and we're never going to see this stuff in the States. I mean, this is stuff that's way more obscure than the Huawei Mate 10, mm-hmm. which we're not seeing in the States too much, but it's a big phone from a big vendor. These are little vendors in little markets with just okay phones. There's going to be a lot of them, and there always is. Mobile World is the place where the world comes together to see for everything from big national and international network devices, network hubs, network routers, all the way down to the guy with 3 smartphone cases.
Okay, so it really does cover the gamut from top to bottom, big to small, and developed versus undeveloped. I wonder if the opposite is true too. That sometimes when you're at Mobile World Congress, you see things that are being developed elsewhere, Asia, Africa, wherever, South America, anywhere, that even, some things won't show up in the States or in, Europe, but I presume that there are things being developed and technologies being played with that we might see here in the States. And I just wonder if at MWC you get an early warning there sometimes about what might be coming 5 years down the road.
You need to dig them out. I mean, obviously, the person selling in sub-equatorial Africa is not going to be sending me emails saying, "Come see our phone." Right. Come see our technology. They're much more worried about selling their own product there. So that's sort of why you wander the floor. It's a pig digging out truffles.
I bet. Now, I always think of this as, the comparison I have is in the States here is to CES. Is this bigger than CES, smaller than CES? Or
no, it's smaller than CES. I mean, okay. CES, CES is a circus, really, and Mobile World is
In a
much
good
more.
way or a bad way? But
I don't know. You like circuses? You like
well,
clowns?
nah, not
It's,
really. They scare me.
uh, Mobile World is really much more focused. It's
Okay.
a much more serious phone, a much more serious show. Um, I saw a booth uh, a couple of years ago. It had a big sign saying, "We have 35 customers."
Okay.
And you think 35 customers, this company is going to be out of business. But then I realized that they were selling network infrastructure, and in the entire universe of their possible buyers was like 47.
Wow. Okay. So they've cornered the
You know,
market at 35 out of 47. They're doing pretty
right?
well.
So right, they're an important company in their in their arena, and I can't imagine at CES anyone saying, "Yes, we have 45 customers."
Right. Okay. Got it. Yeah. The scale is totally different.
Yeah, but still, it fills the main exhibit hall in Barcelona, which is not a small city
Hmm.
and not a small facility. I think there are 8 halls, nine halls of different sizes, um, and then there are satellite shows that spill over into some downtown exhibit space too. So it's not as big as CES. You can maybe see it all, which you can't at CES if you're one person anymore.
Right.
But it fills a week.
Okay. Great. All right. Any other thoughts before I let you go? Anything we might have missed that?
Well, one quick thing.
Yeah.
Last year, Ajit Pai, the FCC commissioner,
Yeah.
spoke at Mobile World. He was on a panel with some of his counterparts from Europe and vendors, and then he was interviewed by a reporter from CNBC. And at the time, Pai was named FCC commissioner, but not
Had
confirmed.
not been put in the position yet. Yeah.
Right. I mean, he was a commissioner, and he'd been nominated as chairman, but everyone knew what he was going to do. Everyone knew the net neutrality was coming on, and he'd been talking about it for a long time,
Right.
and everyone was expecting it. And the CNBC reporter asked him some very very plain, very tough questions that he kind of answered.
Hmm.
So Pai's coming back to Mobile World this year, but the public isn't going to see him. He's speaking at what they call the ministerial program. I mean, to give you an idea of what Mobile World is about,
Yeah.
there's a whole track that's closed to the public. In order to get into that track, you have to be a communications minister, a telecom minister. You have to sell to a telecom minister. It's closed to press. It's closed to everyone.
Yep.
And there's some really interesting stuff in that as I go through the list of programs. Oh, I'd like to see that. I'd like to sit in on that. I might learn something. And you can't get in because
You're not a minister yet, right?
I'm not a minister yet, right? So can you work on that for me? So
I will do my best. I'll put in the good word for you.
thank you. I appreciate it. So Pai is coming. He'll be in Barcelona, but the public isn't going to see him this time. You know, he got beat up too bad last year.
Yeah, I can imagine why he might want to stay away from the public for the time being.
Yeah.
Okay, well, listen, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me. Have a great trip. I may check back with you in a few weeks and see after the trip how things went, and maybe get a download from your brain as to what you saw there afterwards. But have a safe time.
Thanks a lot, Ken. Appreciate it.
Okay, and thanks. And so for now, from the MWC preview, that's a wrap.